So in this video, we're going to set up a Java programming environment in Linux, specifically in Ubuntu version 20.04. If you want some more details as to what is happening in this installation process, I recommend watching the Windows video. I go into more detail there, and these videos are more geared towards somebody working in a Windows environment. This is just because that's the environment that I expect them to have available to them. But anything you can do there, you can do in the Linux environment. These steps will just be a little bit different because of the nature of Linux over Windows or Mac OS. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure we have a tool installed called SDKman. We're going to need this to install something later. If you don't have curl installed, you'll need to install that with sudo apt install curl. And I've already got it, so I'm good. And again, these instructions will be different depending on your flavor of Linux, but this is kind of a general overview so that you can do it no matter what version you have. So we're just going to copy this line and run it to make sure that we can pull down SDKman. Okay, and I have already installed it, so I get everything good here. Then we're going to run this line. And we're going to run this line because it uses the home variable instead of doing a manual version so that it'll work even on your machine. And then we're going to run SDK version, and we see that we do get our version here, which is what we would expect. So that's all good. We're done with SDKman for now. So the first thing we're going to actually install is Java, and to install Java on Ubuntu, we just run sudo apt install open jdk-11-jdk. And Ubuntu is searching and it finds that, I hope. Okay. And it looks like it installed the package on mine. I have previously installed and then uninstalled OpenJDK 11, so it should work fine. To make sure that your installation took, you just type in java-version, and I get the output with 11 up here, I get 11 here, I get 11 here. So Java has been installed on my machine. The next thing we need to install is Gradle, and Gradle is the reason we installed SDKman. So if we go to Gradle, installation, we're going to install with a package manager, and this is the only reason that we installed SDKman, was so that we could install Gradle. So we just run SDK install Gradle 7.0, and we get our process here. Gradle is a relatively small tool, and it's used for managing your Java builds. Again, on the Windows video, I go into more detail on what Gradle actually is. So even if you're not running on Windows, it's still a useful video to watch because I am able to go into more depth on how these tools work there, rather than repeating myself in this video so that I don't forget anything that I mentioned there. Okay, and then it says Gradle has been installed, so to check, we just run Gradle-version, and we get Gradle 7.0. So Gradle has been installed. The last thing we need to install is Visual Studio Code. So we're going to go in here and search for Visual Studio Code. Okay, and we can just go to the download link right here. And we are in a Linux environment, so obviously we're going to go with Tux the Penguin here. And I'm running on Ubuntu, so I'll need a deb package. If you're running on something like Red Hat or Fedora or SUSE, you would need the RPM. But we're running Ubuntu on my machine, so this is what you would install for Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, any of those varieties. But you obviously know your flavor best, so this is just a guideline to show you what you'll need. You can find the tools you need better by all means. This is just a brief overview of one way to approach it so that you see all the tools you'll need. So we'll run the download and open with Software Updater, Software Center, or Software Installer, whatever the default tool is here. If we check on the download has completed. So my machine might be running a little slow. I am running as a secondary install on a partition. So I'm going to open up the folder and see the download. Okay, there it is, and we do have the lock on it, which tells me the software center. There we go. So it doesn't like our software install, so I'm just going to close that and just double click. Failed to support file not install. So it's not liking what I've got here. So we're gonna, and this is a thing you run into with Linux. So we'll delete the file, go back, and we'll just go to the main page. Click the download here, and I'm just going to save the file and see if that works any better for us. Okay, and it looks like it has saved. So we'll go to our downloads directory, double click on it, and it looks like our operating system might be liking this better. And so this is a good example of, there's multiple ways to do everything in Linux, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, so you just got to find what works best for your environment. This appears to be what works best for mine. Mine is asking for a password, so we will run with that. And now we see the installation proceeding. While this is installing, I can talk a little bit about Visual Studio Code, but I do go into more detail on it in the Windows video. It is a text editor, so it can be extended to work as an integrated development environment, which if you're familiar with Linux tools like Vim or Emacs, you can do a lot of the same there. I'm just using Visual Studio Code because it is the tool used in the first robotics competition. So if you're doing any FRC development for a robot, this is the tool you'll use. So we're using it for Java development for computer applications, so that our skills transfer pretty nicely when we move over to robot development. And this is going to take probably the longest of anything it's looking like, because it's not being installed from the package manager or from the SDK man package manager. But we can go ahead and close this window, and should be able to close this window as well. We're actually done with the web browser too, so I can close Firefox. And so this is all we're waiting on to install. And it looks like it's hung up here at about 60%, which not terrible. This is taking a little bit longer, partially because I am running on an HDD rather than a solid state drive on this computer. Normally I don't run Ubuntu. This computer is more meant for Windows because I do use this computer mostly for FRC related tasks, and so because of that, it does have a Windows install on it. These steps will generally work for any Linux flavor you like, just maybe not exactly. The general flow of steps is going to be: 1, you need to install Java on something. 2, you need to be able to install Gradle on something. So if SDK man is the way you need to go for installing Gradle, by all means install SDK man. If you prefer to install Gradle from the source, there will be instructions on the Gradle page for that. And then Visual Studio Code. I'm going through an installer, but you can also add a Visual Studio Code repository. So as long as you are following the steps of get Java, get Gradle, get Visual Studio Code, the specific way you go about that isn't super important. The only things that really matter are that you get those 3 things, and that the Java you get is Java 11, because there's no guarantees that later versions of Java will be using features that we're not, and there's no guarantee that earlier versions of Java have the features we need. A lot of tools you'll find are using Java 8, which is the previous long-term support release of Java before Java 11. I'm not sure what the next long-term support release of Java is going to be, so we'll stick with Java 11 for now. So code appears to have been installed, so we can close this. And I don't see it popping up over here, so we'll pull up our applications list, and we are looking for code is usually enough to find it, and here we go, this iconic blue Microsoft Infinity symbol. So we'll click on that, boot it up, and we get Visual Studio Code looking somewhat like this. When you get VS Code pulled up, you'll want to go to your extensions. There are a few extensions you need to install for Java, and really the only one you have to install is the Java extension pack. Make sure you get the extension pack because it does cover multiple extensions. So you'll click the install button there. There are a few other recommended extensions that you can look at. They're not required for Java development, but I strongly recommend them. One is the bracket pair colorizer 2. Make sure you get 2, not the original. So I strongly recommend this one. It just colors your brackets in pairs so that you can find easily which ones match. If you are going to be doing any development with a partner who is not in the same room as you, I also recommend the Live Share extension pack. Not Live Share audio, but the Live Share extension pack includes multiple extensions. Both of those are included. So we install those. And then the last 2 extensions I recommend are kind of aesthetic extensions. They don't really function as anything super important. Make sure you go back to extensions to search for them. One is the VS Code Icons pack, and it's here from the VS Code Icons team. I like this because if you're opening multiple files, multiple folders, it will give you visual icons so you can see what you're looking at. And up here it's asking me to pick my icon theme, so I make sure I do that. And I click activate here. Those 2 should do the same thing. And then finally, the last thing you can do, if you're interested, is pick a theme. Visual Studio Code comes with this theme by default, but it has tons you can install, and you can tweak them and play with them and find out what you like. I prefer the Cyberpunk pack. So it's this one here by Max. Specifically, it installs a few different themes. So we'll install this pack so we can see what it comes with. I'm a big fan of the Umbra protocol, but it also comes with the Scarlet protocol. So I'm going to stick with Umbra because that's my preferred. But that kind of covers all the tools you need to get installed to make Java development viable for your machine, along with some optional extensions. Again, you can watch the Windows video, and I go into more depth as to what some of these are and how they work. But that wraps it up, and so any of the later videos are going to be in Windows, but again, anything I do in Windows you can more or less do in a Linux environment. You just will need to adapt the specific instructions when I'm setting something up for your particular flavor of Linux over Windows.